Good afternoon, folks. This is Bob from BBD on this Tuesday, the 15th, with some exciting analysis coming out of something I read in the UK Times. It says, it's written an article written by Andrew A. Mishta. It says, can China turn Europe against America? And this is apparently something the Chinese have been trying to do for a long time. Let's see what he says. Right? But there are indications that the Chinese may become more accommodating. The summit comes only weeks before the US presidential election, and the meeting will be Xi Jinping's best opportunity to drive a wedge between the US and Europe on trade. Europe's business community access to the Asian market is seen as essential to the EU economic recovery. Then he says, Europe has been central to Beijing's global strategy for years. Some 75% of European imports come by sea, with access through the North Atlantic being crucial. And China has aggressively pursued acquisitions of stakes in major European ports. Most important, through its Belt and Road Initiative and its investments, China has aimed at establishing an alternative supply chain over land across Europe and Asia. Beijing's endgame is what I call the global inversion of established trade flows, which currently favor maritime routes, a setup that relies on US naval power as enforcement. If China can develop a cross-Eurasian supply chain and protect it, it won't need to match America in the maritime domain where it is currently, and will find many years before it can catch up. Then it says, that would be a fundamental shift in global trade and power distribution. He goes on to say, in the Eurasian rail, the tail end of a Chinese-controlled Eurasian supply chain, allowing Beijing eventually to dominate Europe and bid for global hegemony. China sees Europe as a region whose wealth and technology can be exploited for advantage over the US. Europe is an attractive target. The continent is desperate for market access and cash as the economy tries to recover from a pandemic. Then it says, Washington needs to pay attention to the EU-China Summit this week and its aftermath. Not only does the US need to pay attention, India needs to pay attention to. But here's a counter written in the Wall Street Journal by Walter Russell Mead, called Russia and China Wield Dull Wedges. Why does he say that? He says, on the contrary, far from severing the ties between the US and Europe, China and Russia seem to be strengthening them. The poisoning of Alexei Navalny, Vladimir Putin's chief political rival, so outraged the German public that Chancellor Angela Merkel is coming under renewed pressure to shut down the controversial Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline project. Moscow is evidently preparing to double down on support for embattled Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. China seems to be trying even harder to make itself unpopular across Europe. The emergence of more horrifying details about Chinese treatment of Uyghurs, Beijing's crackdown on Hong Kong, and its threats against Taiwan have roiled Europe's powerful human rights lobby. With Czech Senate President Milos Vystrčil led a 90% delegation to Taiwan last week, China's foreign ministry condemned the visit, and foreign ministers Wang Yi warned that Mr. Vystrčil would pay a heavy price for his temerity. Kind of words they use. Mr. Vystrčil's speech before the Taiwanese Senate was provocative. He said, I am Taiwanese. The gap between the major European countries and China widened noticeably last week. France called for a European effort to develop homegrown 5G technology rather than relying on Huawei, and Germany adopted an Indo-Pacific strategy that will reduce the reliance on China. Both French and German officials reacted angrily to China's threats against the Czechs. These events suggest several conclusions. The first is that neither China nor Russia is ready to do what it would take to pry Europe and Washington apart. In part, this is because, as Americans well know, Europe's demands a high price for its support, and that's where India also goes wrong. For Beijing or Moscow to meet European demands on everything from climate change to human rights would require changes that neither is willing or perhaps able to make. Then it says, one problem is the autocratic governments get so used to bullying and intimidating the people that they fail to grasp how counterproductive such tactics can be when deployed overseas. So China and Russia are driving much of the rest of the world into defensive alliance, and that's the truth. And something going back some days ago, as far as India is concerned, it said, and this is an article written by Saurabh Jha long time back, and I'm just bringing it up just to refresh everybody's memory, as it's all gone off our front screens courtesy the Sushant Rajput and whatever. It says India must stand firm. It says, rather, China is driven by the much more primordial consideration of firming up its Himalayan underbelly while it holds certain advantages, and the PLAGF is clearly digging in and reinforcing their latest encroachments. Delhi must understand that any further CBMs to reassure China will only be misused by the latter to render the LAC utterly meaningless. Then you obviously had said that expose by Indian Express, and a small article comes out in Times of India. Times of India is really not reporting, anything that goes against the government, obviously. It says China company mining data for PSYOPs experts. PM says Parliament must signal we stand unitedly behind our soldiers. What does he really mean? I want to understand. Is he suggesting the Parliament is not standing behind the soldiers? That's just absolutely not true. Everybody on this country is standing behind the soldiers. The people who need to stand behind the soldiers is the government. They've got to have the spine to take on the Chinese. It's got nothing to do with the people. It's got nothing to do with the opposition. He seems to suggest that the opposition is not standing behind the soldier. This has got to be the biggest slide that I have seen. And the statement really actually makes no sense to me. And the Indian Express writes, PM sets tone. Government skirts China economy on day one of Parliament. What else is there to left? China, your biggest problem, skirt it. Economy, your big problem, skirt it. COVID, not discussed. Oh well. On the other hand, obviously the government's being run by the Chinese guys. He says, Chinese envoy hails 5-point plan. All of us know that 5-point plan ain't going anywhere. He hails it, but blames New Delhi for illegally trespassing the line of actual control and altering status quo on border. That's really cool, isn't it, folks? Great stuff for us, right? He says it's the best thing on earth, but he blames us. Oh, God. Here he says, there he is, the son we dog. Somebody should smack him one on his face, I think. I mean, he's such a pompous ass that I don't know why we give him so much space in our newspapers. Our newspapers are actually to blame, right? It's like Sachin Prasha writes, China cites India reports to claim LAC violation. Like the one we go on this bravado bullshit and end up playing right into the Chinese hand. First it was the comment by the Prime Minister who said that they had not entered our territory. I'm told it was to provide some a scope of Chinese squiggle room, but they didn't squiggle out, they squiggled more, and too bad really. And then you hear China laying optical fiberglass cables south of Pangong Tso to boost communication. We should be doing our own bit. And this continues, the Indian Express continues with its expose. It says, new economy under watch, tech startups, range of apps from payment to healthcare. Top venture capitalists, JK to Northeast, Riju to Mufti, many CMs in between. Everybody is under watch, man. And the government, all it's got to say it is, we don't have anything against this company. Oh, well. So, here's another article by Srikanth Kondapalli in a conversation with the Mint. Border tussle has debunked the myth of asymmetry in power. And that is what we have to believe. What he writes is, and this is a guy from JNU, right? So, left, right? There was this argument that India being a 2 trillion economy and China being 5 times that size meant Beijing had a major advantage. They have a much stronger military force, much bigger economy, and a bigger military spending, and this India is no match for China. And this is no match for China, right? That myth has been broken and breached. Concerted action on the part of India has yielded results, and this is absolutely the truth. Next you have Nepal continues to play maiden's handmaiden for China. It says nation politics. This was in Deccan Herald. Nepal nation body. The Nepal government is promising money, land and house along with Nepalese citizenships, most of which is believed to be funded by China. With India locked in a standoff with China on the line of actual control, Nepal has started to play its game with renewed vigor. The KP Sharma Oli government is increasing, sending feelers to people living in 3 villages adjoining the Kalapani region in the Pithoragarh district of Uttarakhand to shift their loyalties to Nepal in order to stake claim over the villages which are administered by India. We have to be careful and watchful. Watchful and watchful and watchful. Nepal is just not our friend, folks. The faster we know that, the better it is. Then it says, there's an article which says, China sees self-reliance as essential to its economic future. China has a problem because, as this article writes, the leadership doesn't issue slogans like these because they think things will be easy. They issue them to force focus, mobilization and prioritization. China is in a lot more trouble than we know and think, right? As you see this article which says China allows hogs as collateral for loans, right? Pork being the most favored dish, I can see in this graph here, the prices of pork have skyrocketed almost 500% from 2018. This must be causing a whole bunch of pain in China. And this has a lot to do with policies of China for banning imports from USA, banning imports now from Germany, banning imports from... He's going to have Australia hell to pay. Let's face it, folks. China is short of food and will continue to be short of food, and that will be their underbelly that has to be used by global governments. Then it says China curbs financial firms like Ant. Beijing curbs Ant and others. The reason this is important is while this is being showcased as something to control the overbearing non-financial NBFCs, but this is actually shows me a split within the government where Ant is being pulled down to size because they don't want Alibaba to get a lot more powerful than the central bank. Watch this space as we go into the future. The other exciting news for India was amid Doha talks, US Special Rep for Afghanistan reaches India. You had Khalilzad to meet Jaishankar, discuss Afghan peace process. These are important points because there was a time that Khalilzad bypassed India many times. I think reality is sunk into this guy who thought you could overplay, you could circumvent India as far as peace was concerned in Afghanistan. His being here and meeting Jaishankar actually tells me a story that the Americans and Khalilzad especially, who was driving this, and most of the exclusion was again personal and was Khalilzad. I think he's trying to reverse course and now understands that India needs to be on the table if peace genuinely needs to come to Afghanistan. Then, as we know, Abe has stepped down and Suga wins ruling party leadership, set to become Japan PM. Suga also set to succeed Abe as Japan's Prime Minister. Important for India to move fast and move fast. We need to make sure that the partnership that Abe developed with India does not falter at this stage. And last but not the least, we have this no demolition till slum dwellers rehabilitated CM. This is about the order given by the Supreme Court. You need to remove these slums all along the railway tracks. It's about time we build the gap. Jai Hind.